I would like to talk about an important issue in relation to Islamic banking and finance industry. Often we have met many critique and we hear many critique talking about or writing about the way Islamic banking and finance industry is currently practicing. Primarily, they actually cast doubt on the future of the industry uh, by, with a view that this industry at the moment, the way it is currently practicing, is primarily replicating as to what conventional industry is doing. I think this criticism, which can and certainly needs to be accounted for, needs also be evaluated as to whether it holds itself truly to the point where it needs. At the same time, I think the criticism is very helpful in helping shape the future of the industry itself. Essentially, what we are trying to look at here is whether following what the current model of Islamic banking and finance industry is, which is primarily driven by the conventional capitalist system, would that hold itself right in the future, in the days to follow? Does it guarantee the sustainability of the practice itself? From the point of view of, I started with the criticism, that criticism is valid to the extent that when critiques are talking about, they're actually talking about something which we don't always see transpired from their discussions or from their writings. Essentially, what they are criticizing is not the legality of the way banking industry is practicing or Islamic banking and finance industry is practicing, but they are actually criticizing the purpose for which that legality existed. I.e., what I'm referring to is that following Sharia or complying with Sharia is one thing, which for most part of the practice one can safely assume that is quite compliant with the Sharia requirements or the legality of it. What actually are they referring to without them perhaps at times realizing is that they do not see the substance which comes out of it reflecting whether the spirit of Sharia has been adhered to correctly as well. So I wanted to make this reference because I think the critiques need to be appreciated, but at the same time they need to be reminded that the focus has to be, and perhaps your thought as critiques of it was primarily driven by the spirit part of the Sharia as opposed to the legal form of it, i.e. the compliance with Sharia. Moving on, what I would also say is that that this particular criticism means that we should look at whether is there something we can do to correct the industry's practice going forward. Best way to look at it would be that because the industry itself was initially structured around the capitalist society or capitalist banking and finance system, we should go back and see whether that fundamental system has any need to change. Perhaps as of today, we are better positioned to safely comment and say that the conventional banking and finance industry has gone through a process of learning whereby it has come to a point and has recognized the fact that the pure capitalist approach, profit maximization approach of the shareholders has not necessarily ensured sustainability for the industry itself. So we have seen the examples of the likes of Lehman Brothers going bust. We have also seen the kinds of Madoff happening, and even very recently we know that Barclays is currently under discussion. I mean, we see these manipulation of interest rates in the market happening by not only one bank, quite a few of those banks. All these big banking financial institutions are currently subject to a lot of criticism themselves. What it really has meant for the regulators in countries all across Europe and America and other developed countries as well, the regulators have started revising, rethinking as to how can we regulate this industry better. Not only that, the likes of Basel have now come up with new regulations. For example, Basel III, has abolished certain type of capital, primarily because the quality of that capital was not considered to be good enough to be relied upon. Similarly, they have come up with measures like stability ratios, that how stable is this capital and how good is that. You know, these new measures which have been now introduced by Basel III and others of that, and regulators like them, these measures are very qualitative in terms of the philosophy of them. So they are looking at the quality of the impact is these banking and finance institutions bring about to the society at large. Now, in order for them to capture and quantify this quality and make it more meaningful, they have yet themselves to figure out as to how can we calculate such ratios. So what I mean to say is that the realization is there. They have already started talking about making things better and essentially trying to be better towards trying to better their conduct as an industry. But as of now, they don't know what would be the best measure in terms of quantifying those qualitative measures. But they have given themselves some time, certain number of years, for the committees to work out, to consult the industry practitioners and everyone, all the stakeholders, as and see as to what should be the right way to measure those newly introduced ratios. But the point I'm trying to make is that the realization is there. It is a global realization. It is a realization of the proponents of capitalist societies. It is a realization of those players in the advanced economies and the Western developed countries, where banking and finance industry is by far the most advanced and sophisticated. They have started working around it to see as to how could they make the whole practice better. Now, given that Islamic banking and finance industry does not exist in isolation, it exists in collaboration with the conventional counterpart. It coexists with that, and as I said before, this industry is built primarily, the banking and finance industry is built primarily as a profit-making business for its shareholders, and which is driven by the capitalist principles and the practices of the industry otherwise in the market. If the major infrastructure upon which this industry, Islamic banking and finance industry, has emerged, of course, while complying with the Sharia requirements, otherwise as a kind of a Sharia overlay onto what the capitalist system was. If that fundamental base is willing to change, why shouldn't Islamic banking and finance industry consider change as well? It is inevitable for this industry to consider a change as well going forward. I'll come back as to what change is really required. But if we remember, I started my discussion with the critiques of Islamic banking and finance industry, and I did conclude that the criticism is primarily to the spirit of Sharia, the maqasid of Sharia, the purpose for which that legality is to be followed. That is where the answer lies as well. So I'm very thankful to the critiques here that they have given enough of a basis for Islamic banking and finance industry alongside to consider a change which is fundamentally correct, which is fundamentally more in line with the Sharia or the spirit of Sharia for that matter, or what we call maqasid al-Sharia. And that spirit is primarily for the benefit and in the interest of time and for the benefit of better understanding of it, for those of us who understand what we know as social responsibility or corporate social responsibility within the context of a corporation, in this case the banking and finance industry as a corporate. The concepts similar to social responsibility, concepts similar to corporate social responsibility is essentially what is in line with the spirit of Sharia. It is beyond the scope of this discussion for me to go into the precise details of what maqasid al-Sharia are, but to simplify what maqasid al-sharia or maqsad al-sharia is, as it is stated in Quran, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, whereby Quran has very specifically mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sent to these words, sent only to be a source of blessing for all of us, for the humanities, for all of us. So it is actually the social good, it is the social benefit, which does not necessarily mean benefit which is provided in the form of charity or philanthropy only. The benefit for every one of us, all of us are the stakeholders, all of us are part of the society, we all need to be benefiting. So what really needs to be done, that change which needs to be done is the integrating the corporate social responsibility like themes, which are but to be built on the fundamentals of maqasid al-sharia, and integrating them into the practice of Islamic banking and finance industry. If we do that, that is going to help us sustain better going forward. I refer to conventional examples, and I refer to examples from Basel or some of the recent regulatory changes. All of it, in one way or the other, qualify to be reflecting aspects of social responsibility. So what I mean to say here is that the mood is already there, the sentiment is there. It's perhaps the best time, in fact, for Islamic banking and finance industry to take the lead from front. It has already been there in the market for quite a few decades now. It can, and if it does so, that if it demonstrates to the world that by adopting Islamic banking and the Sharia principles and the legality of Sharia in Islamic banking practices, achieving the associated social objective or an objective of social benefit becomes more manageable and more deliverable, and if we can demonstrate it and impact can be assessed, quantified and presented, I'm pretty sure that others would follow. When I say that, I also mean to say that let's not forget that the legality of Islam may be limited and binding upon Muslims because of the fact that they adhere to the religion, but or they are Muslim as they are. What is really important here is for us to remember that Islam is the religion for humanity, not just for Muslims. Where is that notion of its relevance to humanity? That is not in the legality of it, that's in the spirit of it. The maqasid al-sharia are for the humanity as a whole. The legality of it is perhaps at best limited to Muslims. We may choose to follow it, adhere to it or not, that's a different question. But the point is that legality is not what Islam wanted us to promote. It is to be promoted perhaps just for Muslims, but the spirit needs to be promoted to all the rest as well. Now, if that spirit can be brought into the practice of Islamic banking and finance industry, I would say that and if Islamic banking and finance industry can demonstrate that they were able to do better in terms of the social good, in terms of the maqasid al-sharia or the corporate social responsibility impact, by adhering to certain legal framework which happens to be Sharia compliant, most of us are reasonable enough to then adopt to it. So it might well be the case that some other banking institutions just adopt certain legal framework, part or in full, of the Islamic banking and finance industry, just because they can see a proven evidence that this helps achieve that. When I say achieving it, it is not the social good of others only, it is the social good of the shareholders first. So let's not also forget that Islamic banking and finance industry is a business end of the day. Business of private individuals. They need to benefit from it as they would like to in any other business. So the model has to be such that we integrate these themes or these maqasid al-sharia into the practice such that the first beneficiaries, even in the short term, are the shareholders themselves, the owners of the businesses themselves. And as a positive externality of it, if others are also benefiting, this is what we want to demonstrate. So i.e. what I'm trying to say here is that that practice would not be harmful to others, and this will not cause any disruption to the society in general or at large. Now, I don't want to just talk about something which is like very good. No, if we talk to anyone and talk about these themes and maqasid al-sharia and social responsibility and all that, no one is going to deny that this is bad. They will all say it is good. The point is, you tell them something which can be achieved, what is practical to achieve. So it should not be just a nice pie in the sky. It has to be something more tangible than that, something more achievable than that. The way it has to work, in my view, is that if we focus on the basis of banking practice, all the banking decisions, any decision in a banking framework is driven by the risk element. Whatever they do is driven by what is the level of risk they can, the appetite they have in terms of the risk and the return. It is that risk return profile which drives banking decisions. If somehow we are able to endogenously integrate these maqasid al-sharia into the risk management framework itself, whereby we can demonstrate that these adhering to such risk management models, i.e. managing risk in a socially conscious manner, would help reduce the risk as well as increase the profitability for these banking institutions or the shareholders. They will perhaps be the first ones to take it on board. So there is a need for such a practice to be adopted. I think this is where the solution lies. If the risk management framework can be fixed, then the value addition to the shareholders is very imminent. It is there even in the short term. We're not talking about something which they may not be able to see in their own life. That is where they find it difficult to buy into it. So we will be able to work something out which is good for every one of them. One other thing which Islamic banking and finance institutions will need to consider going forward, and perhaps not only them, the conventional banks as well will have to do going forward for their own sustainability, is to focus on pro-poor development. When I say pro-poor development, it's not through charities. It is not even through usual microfinance activities. It has to be more participatory in nature. They need to have a venture capital model in place. They need to work on the grassroots levels. They need to develop the capacity of these poor communities across the world. This will have multiple benefits for the banking institutions themselves. At the moment, unfortunately, commercial banking institutions shy away from getting into microfinance or micro-level activities. They have to understand that if they focus on it, this will have an added advantage of creating a new pool of bankable population. Especially even in the developed world, not everyone is banked at the moment. There's a lot of unbanked population. So this population would become their potential clientele as well. And also the fact that you develop their capacities, you are developing enterprises, micro enterprises. These people over time would become contributors to the economy. So the real base of the real economic activity would enhance and increase in a multiple fashion. That is going to give that boost which is required to support the banking and finance industry itself. We have already created a lot of artificial economy. We need to now make sure that the real content in that is increased to a level where it can help these banking institutions sustain over time. So in my view, doing the change which is required is something which is very feasible to be adopted. In fact, even more in case of Islamic banking and finance institutions, because they have already adopted a legal framework which is conducive to achieving that objective behind the legality or the social responsibility aspect of it. So if that is adopted by Islamic banking and finance institutions going forward, I have no doubt that not only that the critiques would become satisfied in terms of the practice of the banks, but also that it will bring that level of sustainability which will help them function and operate over time in a very successful manner.